So, hi everyone. As usual, I am so excited, y'all. I'm so excited about tonight's session. We coming with it. The sharing group is going to be discussing the all of it, all of that which we are. So, the Course in Miracles lesson for tonight is lesson 40. And lesson 40 says, I am blessed as a son and a daughter of God. And I'm just going to read a couple of things that Jesus said that you can say for practical application for this lesson. He says you can say statements such as, I am blessed as a daughter or son of God. I am happy, peaceful, loving, and contented. Or you can say, I am blessed as a son and daughter of God. I am calm, quiet, assured, and confident. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lesson. And we are all reminded to continue to do our daily lessons of A Course in Miracles. So, okay, so this is the last session of the Life After Life series. I'm concluding it with this session. Okay, so I am going to be referring to Dr. Michael Newton's book, Destiny of Souls, and we're going to be continuing to explore the many, many, many layers that we all are. We are blessed as sons and daughters of God, and we are blessed. We are blessed. When we say that we are God, that comes with a whole myriad of truths for us. So just as we have inherited certain physical and personality traits from our earthly parents, in the same way, as sons and daughters of God, we have inherited God's divinity, his power, and his light. We are eternal beings of love. And as we have asserted in this platform, love never dies. And neither do we. We never die. So we're going to continue our Life After Life series, where we talk about the truth of who we all are beyond the shells that we carry. Did you know that your body is a costume that you wear for a little while you are here in this illusory experience of separation? We are all one. All of us are connected, which is why that which we do to another, we do to ourselves. And we're going to read how true that statement really is. Why is the Life After Life topic so important? I have engaged with many people who have contemplated suicide. And in fact, these books that I'm referencing go into the subject of when a soul prematurely decides to take his or her life. And so there is no hell waiting on us, as we have asserted in this platform. It's not waiting on anyone who has committed suicide, but there is an immediate sense of regret as soon as that soul transitions. It's like, because then you remember, I signed up for this. I signed up for this. There were things that I wanted to gain in this particular lifetime, and I gave up, So they wish they had stuck it out and overcome their challenges. But I bring this up, and I think it's very important to discuss, because I once, and I'm very open about this, I once contemplated suicide and very much wanted to die. I speak of this in my video titled, "We Are Not Victims of the World We See." And it's actually lesson 31 of A Course in Miracles. So check that out if you're interested in it. It goes very deep. But once I found out who I am, once I found out who we are, that we are not our bodies, that we have lived many lifetimes, that we are sparks of light, and that we are here to share our gifts, that we are divine individuations of God. Well, I was no longer interested in ending my life once I found that out. I became so preoccupied with learning the depth and the breadth of who we are, of pursuing and mastering my gifts that are God-given, of reading about the pre-birth planning that we all engage in before we incarnate into a body. When I learned that we chose our parents to have a certain experience for our spiritual expansion, that we are not victims of the world, but are orchestrators of our lives. It gave me so much joy to learn our power, to recognize our beauty, to recognize our courage for being here. These things have been kept from us. These truths have been withheld from us. Why? Why has so much energy been put into keeping us ignorant of our holiness? Well, imagine if we all walked around as enlightened beings. We would not be able to be under the control of anyone. No one will be able to control us. No amount of social conditioning, no words that others may speak to us, because we will be solid in knowing that which we are. We are courageous souls, y'all. Did you know that there are parts of God that will not incarnate on the physical plane? There are spiritual beings who have never taken the plunge to live a life on this physical plane called Earth. Why? Because Earth is not for the soft at heart. Earth and its dense and heavy vibrations that we experience here, we experience racism, sexism, violence, social conditioning, judgment. You know, these vibrations are heavy, not because of Gaia. She has nothing to do with that, but because of our ego that we carry and has run rampant here on this planet. Earth is a place that only the most courageous of souls dare to experience. And it is also a place where the most growth can occur for a soul. This is why every single person you see on this planet deserves your respect. Because no matter where they are on their cycle of evolution, no matter whether you think they're enlightened or not, they have braved the challenge of incarnating here to learn, grow, and evolve. So in this moment, and as often as you can, acknowledge your courage, your beauty, and your divinity. Do not ever put yourselves down, ever. You are here, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, because you possess a unique energy a unique ray of light that is serving the entire universe, seen and unseen. Absorb that truth. Everyone who is looking at this video, absorb that truth and allow it to seep into the cells of your body, that you are courageous. I know I sound like I see everything from a rose-colored glass, and I do, because I know what hell feels like. And it is that hell that pushes us right into the light. When we are comfortable, what do? We go to sleep. But it is our dis-ease that wakes us up to our truth. And I have never met anyone who knows the truth of who they are and wants to take their own life. It is only during those years before our awakening, when we think we are worthless, and when we think that we are powerless, and when we think that we are separate from God, that we would believe the lie that we are cut off from hope. This is why we are discussing this, because we are entitled to know our truth, to remember. So don't take my word for it. Research that which you are. Research. It is the truth that will set us free. Crack open one of these books. It's an entire volume of information here waiting on us. Have a hypnotherapy session and look at some other lives that you've lived. Or better yet, delve into meditation and access the vastness that is within you. You can do that for free. You will be amazed. You will be astounded. And you will feel the truth of this content in your heart. You will feel it in your heart. It will validate it for you. If anybody gets one of these books or any other high vibrational sources, let me know what you think. Post a comment, email me. I want to hear from you. So during our last session, we said we would discuss ways in which we learn once we have transitioned, right, from the physical form to our spiritual bodies, right, because we don't die, right? I mentioned that we continue to learn on the other side of the veil. So both Dolores Cannon and Dr. Michael Newton go into great detail about schools that we engage in on the other side and classroom experiences in the spiritual realm. Both of them and many others have written about how we all continue to learn and grow with our soul families. We have soul families, y'all, that we reincarnate with all the time, over and over again. And we continue to identify areas in which we wish to evolve and master certain things in our personalities. Both of these dynamic authors talk about a library that we as souls have access to, which allows us to view all our lives and recognize patterns and pitfalls that we may fall into as a soul once we acquire our bodies. Many of you may have heard of something called a book of Akashic records. These records exist in the spiritual realm and possess a collection of all the lives we have lived. So we as souls can turn to this volume of information to gain knowledge and perspective. And this is one of the ways on the other side that we learn. So it's a way to say, you know what, in this lifetime, I see that I was insecure. I didn't use my voice. I didn't use my power. And then this lifetime, I did the same thing, even though I was in a different body. I was a different gender. I lived a different socioeconomic status, and I still had that challenge. So I need to recognize ways in which to overcome that challenge and master that and understand that I am God, right? So that's one of the ways that we learn on the other side. So many souls have stated that learning in spirit form, right? And learning as a soul is like reading a chemistry book. And you read this book and you learn about different chemicals and the different reactions. If you mix this chemical with that, will it produce a foam? Will it explode? Will it have a distinctive smell or a color? If you mix chemical A with chemical B, well, a soul can only imagine what will happen with these chemicals unless that soul actually plays with them in real time. And that's what life in these bodies do for us. It allows us to actually test out the formulas and use trial and error to come to a conclusion. Look at life as a play. We have orchestrated roles. We're going to read about having soul families where this lifetime this person plays as the mother, next lifetime the person may play as a brother. We switch around these roles so that we can master those things that we want to master. And so allow this information to lighten the weight of life, because we are all playing. We are playing. And when we get to the other side, we look at our lifetimes and we say, okay, what did I do good? What do I need to work on? You know, it's all a game. And when you look at it like that, you're able to go higher than the density of this planet. So not surprisingly, when we have lived a lifetime here on earth and we shed our bodies, we actually use our earthly lives as tools to learn from. On the other side, we can approach one another with the assistance of our spirit guides. And for example, soul A can say to soul B, you know what? In the next incarnation, I want you to get under my skin. I would like to master the concept of relying on myself and seeing my beauty in spite of what others think of me. I need soul B. I need you to play the role of my parent or my sibling or my coworker or my spouse, to do and say unloving things to me that will require me to reach deep within myself and find my own light. I may fall, but I'm going to get back up and brave the storm and be resilient and overcome this challenge. Can you do that for me, Soul B? And Soul B may say, cool, I can most certainly do that. Can I call you names? Can I be so cruel and demonstrate darkness so deep that you might actually forget about your light? And Soul A may say, sure, I choose to master this concept of remembrance. And Soul B may say, okay, but you're going to forget that you asked me to do this. So I'm asking you now, don't strike me or cuss me out, because you have asked me to demonstrate to you that which I am not. We are both made of love. And out of my love for you, I am going to honor your request. So just be patient with me and allow our contract to be your forgiveness practice. And so A may say, absolutely, and thank you for being that which you are not, so that I may grow. So that is a very short concept of what we do on the other side. And this concept, which is a reality for us, this is what we do, y'all. This is not theory. Of asking another soul. It has been beautifully written by a well-known author whose work we have learned from in this platform, Donald Neil Walsh, the author of Conversations with God. He wrote a parable about this very thing, and it's titled The Little Soul and the Sun. And I'm going to include the link to this parable in the description box of the video. I wanted so bad to read it to y'all. But there is so much to squeeze into this 1 hour. But please promise me y'all are going to read it. It is incredible. It's not long at all. It's actually a parable made for children. But it demonstrates what we do on the other side. And it brings in perspective those things that are done to us by people around us. Because of course, when we come in, we have that veil of forgetfulness, and this allows us to remember, oh, okay, there are things I wanted to work on. That's why this person is doing this to me. So let me know in the comment box what y'all think of it, okay, after you read it. I want to know. Okay, so once we have incarnated, right, and have forgotten these contracts that we have engaged in, because I always say, what was wrong with me? Okay, what was wrong with me that I didn't ask this person to act the fool the way they act in the fool? Okay, well, that is the opportunity, right, for true growth, right? So a soul does not know how they will react or respond until they have carried these bodies and believe that they are separate from God. So these lifetimes we have here, guys, are powerfully rich for the soul. It's a rich experience for the soul. A rich experience indeed. We think that our lives are insignificant, but it is priceless to the soul for us to engage in these bodies on this planet. I just spoke with a powerful woman of God this past couple of days, today and yesterday, about this very topic. She chose to be born into a family that is verbally abusive and often tells her who she is as if they know who she is. They don't even know who they are, right? She, as a courageous soul, made these contracts with the souls of her physical family so that she can grow and master this concept of standing firm on that which she is, to not believe the descriptions of what others say about her, to assert herself in a loving but powerful way, and set boundaries for others to raise up to, instead of her creating from a space that they think she is, for them to have to engage with her from the space that she knows she is. This woman is putting her wings on, y'all. Can you imagine what she will manifest on the other side of this experience? I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I just want to be in a room to see it. Okay, so now after we have spent these lifetimes, right? So how exactly do we learn from this time in these bodies? So I'm going to read from one of my favorite books, Destiny of Souls. I'm going to read on page 164 to 168. All right, so this starts, it's so Dr. Michael Newton, right? He's a hypnotherapist, right? He regresses subjects, and once they are regressed and they view these lives, they engage as if they are themselves in that previous life. So he opens it up and he tells us, he says, this case involves a soul, and the soul names, y'all, our soul names, I've never heard of these names before. So I'm just preparing y'all for that. So he said it involves a soul called Anther, who has just completed a life of aggressive behavior toward other people. His mentors decided to begin Anther's life review in the library that we talked about with a scene from his childhood in a play yard. So there we're actually able to see like recordings of the life that we have lived, if they are significant in terms of our growth. So Dr. Newton says, when you return to the spirit world, Anther, is there some highlight of your past life review that you particularly remember and would like to tell me about? And the subject says, after I have time to visit with my group for a while, my guide, Photanius, escorts me to the library for some private study while my past life is still very fresh. And so the doctor says, is this the only time you will come here? And the subject says, oh no. We often come here by ourselves to study. It is also a way to prepare for the next life, too. He says, I will study vocations and avocations for the new life in light of my objectives to see if they fit. And so the doctor says, all right, let's move into the library and please describe everything you see in order that you see it. So then the subject says, the room is in a large rectangular building. Everything is glowing, transparent white. The walls are lined with big, thick books. And the doctor says, has Photanius brought you here? And the subject says, just in the beginning. Now I'm with a woman with pure white hair who has met me. Her face is very reassuring. The first thing I notice when I enter are the long rows of tables that stretch out so far into the distance. I can't see where they end. I see many people sitting at the long tables, looking at the books in front of them. The people studying are not too close to one another. And the doctor says, why is that? And he says, not facing each other is a matter of courtesy and respect for privacy. And the doctor says, please go on. And the subject says, my librarian looks so scholarly. We call these people the scholastics or the archivists. She moves to a nearby wall section and pulls down a book. I know these are my records. They contain stories which have been told and those that are untold. And so the doctor says, do you have a library card? He's being funny. And the subject says, no cards are required, just mental attunement. And so then the doctor says, do you have more than one life book assigned to you? And the subject says, yes. And this is the one I will use today. The books are stacked in order on the shelves. I know where mine are, and they glow when I look at them from a distance. And the doctor says, could you go into the stacks yourself? And the subject says, no, but I think the older ones do. And the doctor says, so at this moment, the librarian has brought you the book you are supposed to study. And the subject says, yes, there are large pedestals positioned near the tables. The scholastic opens the page where I am to begin. And so the doctor says, thank you for that. So now tell me, what are you going to do with this book? And the subject says, before I carry it down to an empty space at one of the tables, we're going to do an exercise together. The writing symbols tells us where to turn the pages, but I can't tell you how. I don't know how to explain it. And so the doctor says, don't worry about that. You're doing just fine. Just tell me how the librarian helps you. And so the subject says, we turn to a page which shows me as a child playing in my schoolyard. And then the subject begins to shake. This isn't going to be fun, he says. I'm directed to the time when I was a mean, rotten kid. I'm supposed to experience this again. Something they want me to see. A part of my energy crawls into the page itself. And so then the doctor says, all right, so let the scene unfold and tell me all you can. And so the subject starts squirming in his chair. And he says, after I crawl into the book, I'm totally engaged with the scene and every aspect of it as it's being replayed all over again. I'm in grade school. I'm a tough kid who picks on the smaller, less aggressive boys, punching them and throwing rocks at everybody when the schoolyard monitors aren't looking. And then, oh no. And the doctor says, what's happening? And the subject says, oh, for God's sake. Now I'm the smallest kid in the yard and I'm being punched by me. This is incredible. After a while, I am me again, being pelted by rocks from everyone else. How this really hurts. And so the doctor says, after quieting the subject down, he asked him, were you in the same time frame as you were as a child or in a form of altered reality? So the doctor is asking him, did you actually go back to that time? Or did you go to some kind of altered reality to re-see the scene? And the subject says, in the same time with altered reality. So he actually went in the same time when he actually bullied the kids, but also with altered reality. So he says, none of this happened in my early life, but it should have. So the time has been played back to me in a different way. We can relive an event to see if we can get it better. I felt the pain I inflicted upon others by my bullying. And then the doctor says, Arthur, what have you learned from all this? And the subject says that I was an angry kid driven by fear of my dad. Those are the scenes I'm going to do next. I'm working on compassion and learning to control my rebellious nature as a soul. And the doctor says, what is the significance of your life book and being in this whole library atmosphere? And the subject says, by studying my book, I am to recognize mistakes and experience alternatives. Being in this quiet study area, watching all the other souls at the table doing the same thing, well, it gives me a feeling of camaraderie with them. And we are all going through this together. So then the doctor tells the reader, he says, later in their session, they discovered that Arthur needed self-discipline and to be more considerate of other people. He says, this has been a pattern of conduct over many lives. And he says, when he asked if it was possible to study future lives in the library, he received this answer. Yes, we can scan a variety of possibilities here on the timelines, but future events are very indeterminate. And this is not the space where I would make decisions about what is to come. So, as we read here, this particular subject learned how it felt to be bullied, as he had been a bully. He was working on self-discipline and how to be considerate of others. And so now we see how our lives in these forms give us a rich opportunity for growth as a soul. We have all grown up to think that there is judgment waiting on us once we have transitioned. There is no judgment, only the opportunity to evolve as a soul. And many times, this entails looking at scenes from our lifetimes and recognizing opportunities where we could have done things different. There is no right or wrong. As we read that this person was a bully as a kid because he was afraid of his father. But by him reviewing this lifetime, he can see how he could have dealt with the situation with his father differently. Dr. Newton also talks about our soul colors. It's a lot in this book, guys, which represent our energy that we hold on the other side and what each color means. So I'm going to briefly go over our soul colors, because each color symbolizes a certain energy. So real quick, white symbolizes purity, clarity, and restlessness. Silver is ethereal. It symbolizes trust and flexibility. Red symbolizes passion, intensity, and sensitivity. Orange symbolizes exuberance, impulsivity, and openness. Yellow symbolizes protective energy, strength, and courage. Green symbolizes healing, nurturing, and compassion. Brown symbolizes being grounded and tolerant and industrious. Blue symbolizes knowledge, forgiveness, and revelation. And purple symbolizes wisdom, truth, and divinity. So we on the other side, we carry different soul energies and different colors based on the character of our soul. And so he also writes about how we all have what we talked about, a soul group, and we reincarnate with our soul families and again play different roles for one another. So I'm going to read on pages 185 to 186 about a particular client who is referencing someone in her soul group and how it relates to her soul color. So on page 185, so the subject says, the subject is very upset. When she's transitioned, she's on the other side, she's looking at everybody in her soul group, and then she becomes very upset. She says, "Oh, I don't believe it. Rowena is here." Or rather, it's Chef. That's her spiritual name, Chef. That's Rowena. And then the doctor says, "What's wrong with seeing the soul of," I'm sorry, I'm laughing. "What's wrong with seeing the soul of Rowena in your spirit group?" And the subject starts frowning and tightening her mouth. And she says, "Well, Chef is one of the disruptive ones." And the doctor says, "Disruptive in what way?" And she says, "Oh, compared to those of us who have smooth, unruffled energy vibrations, she's disrupted." And then the doctor says, "Susui," Okay, that's another soul name. As you observe, so Rowena is her sister-in-law in life. And so he says, as you observe your sister-in-law, how is she different in terms of color and shape? And the subject is still verifying the recognition of Rowena. She says, there she is, all right. Her orange energy is pulsating rapidly. The usual sharp, jagged edges. That's shaft. Sparks, that's what we call her. And the doctor says, does the form she presents to you indicate she is as antagonistic to you here in this spiritual setting as she was in your current life? And the subject says, no. Her voice kind of softens. She says, no, actually, she draws us out. She is good for our group. I can see that. And so the doctor says, I want to consider how her projections are different from your own energy in color and form. What can you tell me about yourself in the spirit world? So the subject says, my color is soft white with rose variations. I am called bells by my friends because they see my energy as fluid droplets of steady rainwater, which give off an echo of faint tinkling bells. Shaft has a sharp clarity to her energy, and I see tints of gold. Her energy is bright and very overpowering. And so the doctor says, and what does all this mean to you and your group? And the subject says, we just can't be complacent around Sparks. She is so restless, a swirl of constant motion. There are always questions from her and challenges about our performance. She enjoys taking parts in our lives, which shake our complacency. And then the doctor says, do you think she is less abrasive in the spirit world than in her current body as Rowena? And the subject laughed. She said, you bet. She chose a high-strung body with a short fuse, which amplifies everything. This time, she's referring to her current life. She came as my husband's sister. Shaft can be so annoying, but now that I see who she really is, I know her motives come from love and wanting the best we have to give. And then she starts laughing again. She said, we help her to slow down too, because she has a tendency to jump into fires without looking. So as we read, Rowena, or her spirit name Shaft, which is actually the client's sister-in-law, was a soul in the group who challenged the members' complacency. She had the color orange, and it sounds like she stimulates growth in the group because of the particular energy that she brings. Every soul has value. When we think they are the most annoying, there is a gift that they bring to everyone else. So now I'm going to talk about the concept of reuniting with souls who have hurt us. And of course, this is very important, right? Because we hurt one another in these forms. I say this from the human perspective because we as souls become restored once we transition. Sometimes that healing process takes longer than others, but we all ultimately heal from the traumatic lifetimes that we might have. And the scene opens up in this particular case with all the souls reuniting with the subject whose name is Ray after his incarnation is complete. So I'm going to read from pages 279 to 285. So let me start. So the doctor starts and says, in case 47, I have chosen a man who had a rough start in his last life with an abusive, tyrannical father who was never satisfied with anything that he did. And I'm going to continue on page 281. And so Ray starts out describing everybody who's in his soul group. But then as he gets to closer to where his father's soul is sitting in this group, he starts to get different. So the doctor says, is that everybody? And the subject starts twisting uncomfortably in the chair. He says, no, I see a shadow behind my Aunt Bess. And the doctor, after he calms him down, he says, Ray, tell me exactly what happens next. And then the subject says, I see a flash of light now. Oh, it's my father, Carl. He is hiding behind the rest. He wants to be last. He is avoiding me. He is embarrassed at the lightness of the moment. All the hugging, laughing, and excitement going on. My father doesn't feel like participating in this right now with me, and neither do I. And so the doctor says, I want you to move forward to the time when you talk to Carl, your father. Try to give me the details of just how your conversation unfolds with him. And so the subject says, we soon get to this, the critiquing of what took place, and while talking about our attitudes and judgments. Marion and Anne are there, and Carl is still chagrined. He starts by saying, I was too severe with you as your father. I know what we planned got out of hand. That life, that particular life, it just got away from me. And so the doctor says, what does this admission mean to you, Ray? And the subject says, with a sense of revelation, he says, Carl's soul is not like the alcoholic, abusive man who was my father. Oh, I see some similarities, but his innate goodness was shut down. He was not able to control the obsessions of this body that he was carrying. So doctor says, forgive me, Ray, but aren't you making excuses for his performance? I mean, Carl had lessons to learn too, didn't he? And the subject says, okay, he volunteered to join with the body prone to emotional outbursts. Besides the plan of making things deliberately hard for me, he wanted to see if he could better moderate a body prone to violence. Carl's previous life was one of excesses. He admits this last life we had together did not work out well. Carl did not do the right thing by me or himself. And so the doctor says, you still don't think Carl is excusing what he did to you as your father because of his body type? And the subject says, no, you can't get away with that here. Like, you can't make excuses here. Carl is explaining that he failed me in many ways this time around, but he learned from that life and he asked me if I did too. And so the doctor says, please continue with this, Ray. And the subject says, I can see all his anger is gone. And this is strange to me now because I haven't yet gotten used to his real self. But it won't last long. And the doctor says, as you consider all this, Ray, what negative inclinations does the soul of Carl have which carried into his incarnations? And the subject says, he knows it is the desire to control events and people around him. His past life as my father fed into those tendencies. Both of us have trouble in life with confrontation. This is why we work so well with Ann and Marianne. They seem to diffuse life's frustrations so much easier than we do. And the doctor says, let's return to the circumstances which led to your need to be under the control of a stern father who was supposed to make things deliberately hard. Even if Carl had not gone overboard in his assignment, I don't understand why you volunteered to be his son. And so then the subject laughs. He says, for that, you would have to know our God. And the God's name is XX. I'm serious, y'all. His name's XX. He uses humor rather than being overly preaching. He does not push us hard as an authority figure because Carl and I react badly to a firm hand. XX nudges us while letting us believe all the ideas we get that we get coming from our own perceptions. He allows me to think I'm getting away with something, and then he tweaks my conscience. He is a coach, not a director. So the doctor says, well, I'm glad to get that information about your God, but how does all this relate to you and Carl in this past life of a damaged relationship between you? And the patient says, in my life before the last one with Carl, I was an orphan and I got into some bad habits. I lost my real identity in that body. It was a wake-up call for me. And so the doctor says, in what way? And the subject says, I had no directional support as a kid. My mother had died. Being alone as a kid can make you or break you. The trouble was, as I grew stronger and more self-reliant, I had little concern for others. I created a life of taking and giving back little. I felt people owed me. And then the doctor said, look, Ray, do you have to go to such extremes? How about having a loving father in the life you planned with Carl to compensate for the one before as an orphan? And the subject shrugs, too easy. After my life as an orphan, my guy asked me, I suppose now you're ready for a life of being pampered by indulgent parents, huh? And I said to him, say, that doesn't sound bad at all. And then he added, shall we all arrange for you to be an only child of wealthy parents? And then he said, so we had some fun with that scenario for a while with Carl entering into this discussion with a few quibs about wanting plenty of money as my father in order to play with horses because he loves horses. And so the doctor says, so how did you and Carl finally come around to making a decision to have a stressful life together? And the subject says, our God knows us so well. I am too far along for a so soft approach to life. In the end, we asked him for assignments together in a difficult environment. And the doctor says, didn't things go from bad to worse for you as far as loneliness and alienation in your last two lives? I'm wondering if you and Carl learned anything from having such a poor relationship as a father and son. And the subject paused and he said, yes and no, it's true. I let my alienation in both these past lives serve as an excuse for a lack of real progress. But at least I had a father in my last life who didn't leave. I did better with Carl's abuse than total abandonment in my life before Carl when I was an orphan. So the doctor says, That's not much of an endorsement. Was the soul of Carl your father in your life as an orphan? And the subject says no. And the doctor says, what was your primary lesson in these two lives? And the subject says, to keep my identity, no matter what the adversity. This will make me a stronger soul. And so the doctor says, I'm sure it will, Ray. But I should think you might consider slowing down now and then and take easier lives as a change of pace. Would it be so bad to catch your breath and build a stronger foundation for identity retention in future bodies? And then the subject got upset. No, I told you I can do this. And XX knows it too. My strength is perseverance and fighting adversity. My life with Carl as my father was a recovery test from the previous life as an orphan. And it was not a failure for me. I learned plenty for the next life. And I tell Carl this to make him feel better too. So the doctor says, how do the two of you bring all this to some sort of resolution in the spirit world? And the subject says, when we are alone, we agree to exchange the energy of our thoughts and all the memories of that life together. And the doctor says, is this the full mind exchange I have heard about? And the subject says, yes. Every particle of my identity as Carl's son in that life is transferred to Carl, while he projects all his memories as my father to me. It is very subjective, and that's good. In my group, we call this passing the cup of sorrows. And the doctor says, and is each perspective totally honest? And the subject says, there can be no deception here. And the doctor says, does this exchange last long? And the subject says, no, the transfer is brief but complete. Then we know all the trials and burdens, pains and angers, the drives from each other's perspectives, because it is like actually being inside their old body. We become the other person. And the doctor says, does this mind exchange bring forgiveness? And the subject says, it is so much more than that. It is an indescribable melding of two minds. We can both experience the circumstances which led the other to make certain choices. I feel Carl's lack of fulfillment, and he feels mine. Once the exchange is made, it cuts so deep. Forgiveness toward another isn't even necessary. You forgive yourself, and then we heal each other. Understanding is absolute. We will try again in a different life until we get it right. And the doctor then explains to the reader that Ray has had, in that current life as his client, he had challenges with chemical dependency and obsessive behavior. But at age 45, he is drawing on his inner resources and turning things around. And he says from what Ray has told him, getting in touch with his true soul identity in their sessions together have been very helpful. And the soul of Carl is now his client's older brother. So the soul of Carl that was his abusive father in the current lifetime is actually his older brother. So again, we exchange roles. And as his older brother, Carl was not as easy on Ray when they were growing up. Many of the same relationship patterns were being played out today as in the past. But even so, these two souls, he says, have been far more engaged with each other as brothers than they were as father and soul and son. So we see how this is incredible that Ray and his father Carl were able to reach complete forgiveness. And Ray and Carl decided to reincarnate as brothers. So what I get from that, though, is we don't have to wait to transition to forgive. We can understand that now as enlightened beings. We can understand, I might have asked this person to be a jerk to me. I might have asked them to do that. But even if I didn't, I recognize that this is a daughter or a son of God. And though I'm going to set boundaries and love myself and not accept abuse, I'm also going to recognize that this soul is in my life for a reason and that this behavior comes with a gift. So, okay, y'all. Before we close out this series of life after life topics, and believe me, everyone, I wanted to talk about this concept of judgment, of heaven or hell. But I can talk about this. We can have 10 sessions about this, but I wanted to, at least before we end, talk about the concept of heaven or hell. We have asserted many times that there is no judgment, right? It is only an opportunity for us to grow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a group of elders that spirits have talked about seeing after an incarnation. They are a group of highly evolved beings who have a discussion or a transfer of thoughts, because the communication is telepathic as spirits, that they have this exchange with the soul who has just completed an incarnation and kind of talk about how the lifetime went. What were areas for improvement? What was done well? So I'm going to read from page 201, where Dr. Michael Newton talks about this. He talks about these elders. So he opens it up and he says, not long after souls return to their spirit groups, they are called before a gathering of wise beings, a step or two above our guides. These ascended masters are the most advanced, identifiable entities my still incarnating clients see in the spirit world. They give them different names, such as the old ones, the sacred masters, or even pragmatic titles like the examiners or the committee. But the two most common names that he hears the most to describe these highly evolved beings are council and elders. So he titled this chapter, The Council of Elders. And so on page 221 to 223, I'm going to read an awesome example of a soul going before this council of elders and how the soul was surprised about the single act he did that impacted them. They wanted to talk about this single act that this soul did. So let me find. Okay, so on page 221, so the soul has gone through the process. He has transitioned from his body, and now he's being escorted. He has met the council of elders, and he's a little bit nervous. And so the doctor says, how does the meeting open up for you? And the subject says, the director says to me, welcome. We are glad to have you with us again. And the doctor says, what do you say? And the subject says, thank you. He says, but I'm thinking, I hope this goes all right. So then the doctor says, what kind of thoughts do you pick up then from the chairman who seems to be running things? And the subject says, he doesn't want me to feel like the wise ones are so superior that I can't talk to them. This meeting is for me. Then he says, how do you feel about your progress since we last saw you? Did you learn anything new we can talk about? This is the way these meetings open up, the subject says. And then the subject says, they want to hear what I have to say. So then the doctor says, do you feel more relaxed now? And then the subject says, yeah. And so the doctor says, give me an idea of how things proceed from here. And so the subject says, we start with what I did right. I had a successful company, which employed many people in my past life. I'm turning this over in my mind. I want to make a good impression by telling them about my charity contributions, my good acts. Then he says, then things drift into the way I ran my company, my inability to avoid conflicts, disagreements and anger with my employees. And then he starts to grow agitated. He's like, it's so frustrating. And I'm working on this, but. And so the doctor says, please go on. Does your guide assist you in any way with this? And then the subject says, my guide, Joaquin, speaks from behind me. He sums up the main parts of my life and my objectives to contribute to society by employing people during the Depression, during the Great Depression that we had in America. And so Dr. Newton says, sounds good to me. Are you happy with the manner in which Joaquin is presenting you to the wise ones? And the subject says, well, yes, he states what I wanted to do and then what actually happened. His tone is even. Joaquin does not defend or praise me. He simply relates my participation in the events during a bad time in America. So then the doctor asks him, do you think of Joaquin as kind of like your defense attorney? And the subject said, no, that's not the way things are here. And then the doctor says, is Joaquin like objective in his summation of your life? And the subject says, yeah, but we hardly started. I'm forming my thoughts about how well I provided for my family, but this kind of gets mixed up with my professional life. I can't get how I treated my employees out of my mind. I can't get it out of my mind. This really bothers me. Joaquin is quiet now. He doesn't want to interfere with my thoughts. And so the doctor says, then let's stay focused with the thoughts between you and your council of wise ones. Please continue. And so the subject says, I'm trying to anticipate their questions. I know I enjoyed accumulating material possessions in my life. They want me to tell them why. And I say that it made me feel valuable as a person, but I stepped on people. Then they bring up similar actions on my part from former lives. And if I feel that I am doing better. And so the doctor says, do you think their thought probes about your past are jeopardizing the summary of your current life in some way? And the subject says, no, there is no harsh edge to their questions. I'm okay with this. But now my mind is racing and I think of my charity work again as something I should stress. Then the doctor says, you're doing just fine with this. Tell me what happens next. And then the subject says, the wise one in the center, his powerful mind envelops me. And the doctor says, what does he communicate to you exactly? And the subject says, this is what I hear in my mind. Because remember, we communicate telepathically. So this particular wise one in the center is expressing this thought to the subject. He says, Emmanuel. We are not here to judge you, punish you, or to override your thoughts. We want to look at yourself through our eyes, if you can. That means to forgive yourself. This is the most challenging aspect of your time with us, because it is our desire that you accept yourself for who you are with the same unconditional love we have for you. We are here to support you in your work on earth. Toward that end, we would remind you of the bus stop incident. And then the doctor says, the bus stop incident, what does that mean? And then so the subject says, I was confused myself when he said it. I looked back at Joaquin for assistance. Like, what's going on? What they talking about? So then the doctor says, explains what happened. Then Emmanuel explained. And so then the subject says, the wise one in the center, his thoughts come to me once more. And it says, you do not remember this incident? The woman who you helped one day while she was sitting at the bus stop? And I said, no, I don't. Then they wait for my memories to kick in, and someone sends a picture into my mind. I'm beginning to see. There was a woman once. I was walking toward my office with my briefcase. I was in a hurry. Then I heard this woman crying softly to my left. She was sitting at a bus stop next to the sidewalk. It was during the Depression, and people were desperate. I stopped then on an impulse. I sat down next to her and put my arm around her, trying to comfort her. This was a very unnatural thing for me to do. My God, is that what they're interested in? I was with this woman for only a few minutes before the bus came. I never saw her again. And so the doctor says, how do you feel now about the wise one bringing up this incident during your hearing? And the subject says, it's so crazy. An entire lifetime of giving money to charity, and they are interested in this? I gave this woman no money. We only talked. And so the doctor summarizes for the readers that Emmanuel felt sorry for the woman at the bus stop. And although he was in a hurry to get to his office, he sat down next to her, and his brief, compassionate gesture did not last long. Yet in those moments, we learned that Emmanuel reached her pain. He looked into her eyes and told her she was going to make it through her troubles because he was confident that she could be strong. She stopped crying, and when her bus came, she stood up and told him she would be all right. Then he hurried off and forgot this brief act of kindness for the rest of his life. He forgot about this. So then the doctor summarizes that the bus stop incident in this case appears to be a small thing when stacked up against a lifetime of acts. It was not a simple act to the council. As we move through life, there are many gestures between people that are uplifting. They may be so momentary that we are not conscious of them at the time. In the spirit world, nothing is insignificant. No act goes unrecorded. So I thought of all the cases in here, I thought this was so powerful because this person gave charity and, employed people and all this kind of stuff. But the council was only interested in that one short act that did not even involve money because he gave of his energy. So now we're about to conclude, y'all. It's been a long night. We're about to conclude. All my teeth are showing right now, y'all. I'm smiling so hard. I've been waiting to read y'all this case since we started this Life After Life series. It's so funny. It's hilarious. Like, I remember where I was when I read it for the first time. I laughed so hard, tears came out of my eyes. So y'all know how to have fun, right? My audience, y'all don't take stuff too seriously, right? Okay, so I'm glad we all on board. Because I have to read this to y'all. Like, I have to read this to y'all. I hope it's as funny to y'all as it is to me. So again, this is addressing the whole heaven or hell concept. So I'm reading from pages 80 through 84. Let me find it. All right, here we go. This is case 18 in this book. This one case gave me life, y'all. Okay. So I'm going to read it. All right. So the doctor starts out by saying to a client, no, let me start it out. So the doctor summarizes and says, case 18 concerns the death experience of an evangelical preacher of the 1920s. This man had spent a whole lifetime seeing the devil in every nook and cranny of his town in the Deep South. During my review of this life with the client who carried these memories, I was told, he said, my parishioners were shaken to their bones with my fiery sermons of the hell awaiting all sinful transgressors. So he says, I will begin this case with the scene as it unfolded right after my subject reaches the gateway. So after the subject leaves the body and reaches the gateway, this is what happened. So he said, so doctor says, you say that although things are not too clear, you are floating, right, in bright light, and someone is coming towards you. Is that what you said? And the subject says, yes. He says, yes, I'm kind of disoriented right now. I haven't gotten used to things around here yet. And so the doctor says, that's fine. Just take your time and let the figure float toward you as you float toward it. So the subject has a long pause, and then with like a horrified voice, he exclaimed, oh God, no. And the doctor says, what's going on? And the subject starts shaking. Oh Lord Almighty, it's the devil. I knew it. I've gone to hell. And the doctor said, now take a deep breath and try to relax as we go through this together. You are not in hell. And the subject says, oh yeah, then why do I see the devil right in front of me? And then the doctor says he had to get some tissue and wipe off the sweat off the man's face. He says, try to calm yourself. This is some misinterpretation here, and we will find out soon what's going on. So then the subject is not paying any attention to him and starts rocking back and forth and says, oh, it's over for me. I'm in hell. And then the doctor says, tell me exactly what you see. And the subject says, a being, demonic, reddish green face, horns, wild-eyed fangs. The facial skin is like charred wood. Oh, sweet Jesus. Sweet Jesus, why me of all people who spoke so much in your name? And so the doctor says, what else do you see? And then the subject says, what else is there to see? Can't you understand? I'm in front of the devil. What else you want to know? So the doctor says, I meant the rest of the body. Look below the head and tell me what you see. And then the subject says, with a violent shudder, nothing, just a wispy ghost-like body. And then the doctor says, stay with me. Doesn't this seem unusual to you? That the devil will appear with no body? Move forward in time rapidly now and tell me what this figure does. And then the subject's body jerks up violently, and then with a great sigh of relief, he sags back into his chair and he says, oh, that jerk. And he don't say jerk. He called him a cuss word. The cuss word started with a B. And when I read this, I'm like, we cuss on the other side. I love it. I love it. So he was like, that jerk, I might have known. It's Scanlon. He is taking his mask off and smiling wickedly at me. And the doctor says, who is Scanlon? And then the subject says, my guide. This is his crude idea of a joke. And then the doctor says, what does Scanlon really look like now? And then the subject says, tall, aquiline, features, gray hair, full of mischief making, as usual. And he starts laughing, but still like not fully recovered. He said, I should have known. He caught me unawares this time. And then the doctor says, does Scanlon makes a habit of this sort of thing? Like, why frighten you just as you coming into the spirit world, a little disoriented? And the subject says, listen, he is a great teacher. That's his way. He has got our whole group using masks, but he knows I don't like them much. And the doctor says, tell me why Scanlon used a devil's mask to scare you right after this life. Talk to him now. And then the subject says, I had it coming. Oh, I know it. I spent a lifetime preaching about the devil, scaring good people, telling them they were going to hell if they didn't pay attention to me. Scanlon gave me a dose of my own medicine. And so the doctor says, how do you feel now about his methods? And the subject said, he made his point. And so the doctor said, I want to ask you a blunt question. Did you really believe what you told your parishioners about seeing demonic forces everywhere, or were you motivated by something else? And the subject says, no. I believed what I was saying about evil being everywhere in every person. I was not a hypocrite. And then the doctor says, are you sure it wasn't false piety? You did not pretend to feel and be what you were not? And the subject says, no, I believed it. My undoing was my methods of preaching and the love of the power over others that this ability gave me. Yes, I admit that failing. I failed in that area. I made life miserable for some of my flock. Not seeing the essential goodness in people. I was always suspicious because of my obsession with evil, and this corrupted me. And the doctor says, do you feel part of what you became was the result of the body you chose in this life? And the subject says, yes, I lack restraint. I chose a body with a feisty mind and allowed myself to be swept away. I was too confrontational as a preacher. And the doctor says, and do you know why your soul mind chose to enter into this partnership in the body of a preacher who constantly intimidated people? And the subject says, oh, shoot, I let it happen because it felt good to be in control. I was afraid of not being taken seriously enough. And the doctor says, you were worried about the loss of control? And the subject says, yes, that I would be inadequate. And the doctor says, by his use of a devil's mask, do you think Scanlon demeans what you stood for in the church? And the subject says, no, that's not my teacher's way. I chose the body of a minister and he helped me with all this. I took a wrong turn. It was not the wrong path, but my faith was not a bad thing, but I became misguided. And then I misguided others. Scanlon wants me to see what it feels like to scare people rather than reason with them. He wanted me to feel the same fear that I gave to others. And then the doctor says, so then the doctor progresses the subject into his soul group. And so then the doctor says, who is the first person who comes to you? And then the subject says, it's an angel, soft, glowing white wings. And then he says, okay, I'm on to all of y'all. Enough. This is enough. And then the doctor says, who is the angel? And the subject says, my dear friend, Diane. She has removed her angel's mask and she is laughing and hugging me. And the doctor says, I'm a little confused. Souls can assume any shape or create any features they want. Why bother with masks? And then the subject says, the mask is similar to a figure of speech, a symbol one can hold in the hand to put on and pull off for effect. Diane is offsetting Scanlon's huge joke by being a loving angel for me, while the others are laughing at what happened to me. And then the doctor says, what kind of individual is Diane? And the subject says, very loving and full of humor. She likes practical jokes, as does most of my group. They all know I take things way too seriously. I don't like the mask very much, so they tease me. And so the doctor says, during your lessons, are masks used as a means of teaching about right and wrong behavior? And the subject says, yes, they are a means of acknowledgement of good or poor thinking, misconceptions. They identify aspects of our character, which are positive and those which are undesirable, and we can role play with each other. And so the doctor says, did Scanlon originate the use of this sort of prop for your group lessons? And the subject says, laugh, and he says, yes. And what he does makes an impression. And so then the doctor tells the reader, he said, this was a strange case. And I'll admit, Scanlon had me going for a few minutes when I thought his client was taking me to a place no other had been before. He says, the treatment the subject received at the gateway by the use of a devil mask is an anomaly. So it's rare that this happens, but this particular soul group like to use masks. He says, moreover, I've never encountered a guide whose behavior had such extravagance and provocation. So how can y'all not love every single part of this? How can you not love this? How can you not go and get this book? Please don't stop where I stop. Get this book, y'all. If y'all are interested, if it gives you life, if you want to know more, there's so much more in this book and in Dolores Cannon's book. This book goes into body choices, where souls choose a body. It's like you have 3 different bodies in front of you and you choose which body you want. And according to the body you choose will kind of dictate your personality and the kind of life you'll live. And a soul can view like screenshots of their life in that body before they decide to incarnate. They don't see everything, but just little snippets. It talks about souls integrating into the body as a baby, getting to used to that body when they're about to incarnate, spending time making friends with the body, because the body itself is a whole other entity. So really, 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 really fascinating stuff, y'all. But I hope that reading about us has been as enjoyable for you as it has been for me, and understanding that we can relax. And we talked about this the last time. We can relax, right? About any issues that we've had. I'm trying to unmute everybody, so I'm a little distracted. We can relax about any issues that we've had, about, I'm afraid of death. What is death gonna be? All that kind of stuff. We can relax. And now that we can relax about that, we can focus on our life. We can focus on the enjoyment and the passion and those things that give us life. So I've asked everybody to unmute themselves. You can unmute yourselves if you want to give a comment. I hope y'all love this. This stuff, I can talk about this all day. And Takia says, I love it. It's like a storybook time for grown-ups. Me too, Takia. And she said it reminds her of the movie Soul. Yes, I agree. And Khadijah laughing out loud. Does anybody have anything to say?
I wanted to say thank you. I really loved the session. It was lighthearted. It was empowering. It was funny. I loved when you talked about how you were like, oh, they curse up there. We didn't know that. Like it just makes it relatable.
Yeah.
Hopefully you heard enough. But no, thank
Yeah.
you. It was amazing.
Yes. Thank you, Khadijah, for that. I'm glad you enjoyed. Yes, I realized. I'm like, wait a minute. We cussing. Y'all know that gave me like saying they cuss. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Kay. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Anybody else have anything to share? It's not mandatory. I just wanted to
I did. When you were talking about the part where they were describing like the soul colors, a lot of the characteristics I was noticing kind of match the chakras, our 7 chakras. Some of the colors aren't in there. Some of the colors you mentioned aren't a part of the chakras, but a lot of the colors that you did mention and the characteristics really like aligns with the chakras, as we know.
Yes, that is an interesting observation. That's an interesting observation. I actually didn't connect that, but you're right. You're absolutely right. And that was interesting, right? Like our soul colors, how it gives certain personalities. That was very interesting. And I talk about how we all bring a certain aura and a certain rate of light. I always say that we all bring our own unique character of God. And even if something seems like it's negative, it serves a purpose. Because for that person, for that soul that was orange, she impacted the group. They were complacent, they were comfortable, they were all gentle and this and that, and it's like she shakes them up. So that was fun. Y'all, again, this has a lot of information in it. This is not the only book he wrote. It's just so much. Like when you really understand who we are and what we do, it's beautiful. It's inspirational, and it allows you to incorporate humor into our lives. So thank you everyone for joining. Desmond, you unmuted yourself.
Oh, well, yeah, I was gonna say that like it seems like to me, I took it as the different colors, sort of like the other person was saying, was a connection with the chakras, but also it could be looked at as shadow work. Like a lot of times you have different parts of your personality that you try to hide, that you may need to work on and integrate into that one person or that one being to kind of be authentically yourself.
That's a great point. And maybe when you are exhibiting certain personality traits, that color that relates to that comes out in you as a soul, because we can't hide on the other side. That's really interesting. I love that. Brittany says, I love the session. It was going to be so helpful for me moving forward. I really, really enjoyed this series. I'm glad y'all did. Okay, so thank y'all so much. Love y'all. Love and like. Thank you for joining.